If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button as well as the bell to be notified of future videos. Thank you.
Hello, my friends. Yes, here I am. I told you I'll be back. So good morning to all of you. I hope everyone is going to have a beautiful day. Now, get us some tea. Everyone take your places and let's chat. Over the last couple of weeks, you've learned just about, well, not just about, I think you've learned everything about me as a person, me as one of the first female police ladies in the country, me and my career in the police, and even my days after the police, when my child was born, when I tried to be a housewife. You've learned about the troubling waters that I've gone through in my life. So I think you know me very well around. So I've decided today I'm going to take you in the inner side of the circles in my house. It means my mother, my father, which both means the world to me, my two brothers, and my sister. Unfortunately, both my brothers and my sister is not alive anymore, which left a big hole in my life, but more about that later. Let's start with my father. My father was a real patriarch of the family. He was a big man, not only big in size, but big in everything he did in his life. Everything he touches, always, he just had to do it exactly the right way. That's how I was brought up to. But let's start from when I can remember. You know, they say children under the age of 4 can't remember very much of their life. But I'm not so sure about that. But anyway, when I got my brains, so when I could start remembering, we lived on a small holding just outside the little town Louis Trichardt in Limpopo. It was wonderful days. My father had cattle, he had sheep, my mother had chicken and turkey and geese, and you name it, there was other things. We lived, we weren't rich, but we had a wonderful life. I can remember as small kids, we used to take off our shoes and then we followed the cattle when they do their droppings in the winter. Then you go and stand in it with our feet, just to warm our feet. Well, more for the fun, but then we found out, gee, but that's warming our feet. So, you know, that's, you won't believe it, but really, we drank milk, fresh milk, directly from the cow. It was wonderful. Our biggest bread. It was just our biggest pleasure to do it that way. And my father learned us as young kids how to milk a cow. We each had our little emmerkie, our little chair, which we sit on, and you had to milk a cow. I remember my mother separated milk every day, and she made her own butter. There's not a thing on the farm on that little plot that my mother didn't make. She even made peanut butter. Yeah, believe it or not. She made everything. Every year in the winter, we went behind the Suidbosberg, the farm there, for a hunting expedition. And that's where me and my brothers and sisters learn how to handle guns. We had to shoot our own book. Doesn't matter big or small or what, but that's a test. You had to go through that before you are considered as a member of the winter holiday. But besides that part of my father, my father was just always there for the family. We all knew if we had a problem, we could always go and chat with my father. And to me, my father was one of the wisest men in the world. It just seemed that he always had a plan for something. He would sit you down in a chair, and then the problem, he would discuss the problem with you. And if he couldn't come up with a plan immediately, he would come back to you later. But then, unfortunately, I was about 7. It was my first year at school. I've just started my first year at the law school, Louis Trichardt. That's a private school, Louis Trichardt in English. And then the government gave us houses to live in town, because that part then became a black township. To me, it was as if the life ended there. But we all learn to adapt to things. And I finished at the end of my grade 1 year. My father got a fantastic offer for a job in Nelspruit to be in charge of building a new sawmill, which then was just outside Nelspruit. Today, I'm sure it would have been in the middle of Nelspruit if it was still existing, but I don't. So I had to change school. Well, we all had to change school because, I mean, there wasn't much difference between us. My eldest brother, he was 6 years older than me. My other brother, he was 5 years older than me. And my sister, she was 3 years older than what I am. So we sort of, as a farm worker, one day said, oral papies. Anyway, and then we all had to change school, which was not easy. Coming from a place like Louis Trichardt and going to Nelspruit, which was a rather big town for those days, it was difficult. And the house that we lived in was right next to the train line. And that train went day in and day out. There was never a quiet moment. But we enjoyed it. We got used to it. And then 2 years later, the sawmill was finished. And my father decided to go and work on the mines. Now, I don't know whether you know it or what, but those days, in that area of Nelspruit, White River, Barberton, around about there were plenty of gold mines. around every corner, just about, there was a gold mine. So my father got a fantastic job on the mine called Alpine Mine. I don't know what the word Alpine means, but it was like 30 miles those days from the town Barberton, outside Barberton. And there is a bus, although there was a school bus, which the mine supplied. The road was not a very nice road. It was through the mountains and up and down. And when it was raining, they had to put chains on the tires so that the tires doesn't slip in the mud. And my parents didn't think that is ideal circumstances for us to go to school. So we all sat around the dining room table one night. We had a family discussion, as we called it. And the end of the story was that we decided we are going to boarding school. Barberton had a beautiful boarding school. My father went there, and the four of us got in, and the day before the school started, there we went, the four Foster's, because those days my surname was Foster. There we go, we're going to boarding school. Those of you who attended the boarding school will know that there's quite a big difference between boarding school and home. You've just, in our house, it was just you accept the things, the new things in your life. But my father was very involved at the school. He was there for our sports days. If the school needed something to be done, to be repaired or something, my father would go there over a weekend, and he did it for free for the school. So it was a blessing for all of us, because we could only go home once in a term. And then we were lucky. My father worked at the school. We could have seen my father if he was there for our sports meetings. We could see him there. And we stayed there in Barberton till, I think it was round about 1954. As far as if I remember correctly, I was about in what then was called Standard 4, when my father was transferred to another mine in the Klerksdorp district. Well, it was just outside Waterbeestfontein, which those days had the nickname the Ghani. It's not the same Waterbeestfontein that was next to Stilfontein. It's completely different. And I think today it's officially called the Ghani. It was a small community. It was a new mine also, and we got nice houses. I remember it was wooden houses, and there was about a foot lifted up from the ground. So for us, it was space to play underneath the house, which my parents thought it was very dangerous. But anyway, we enjoyed it. But once again, we became boarders in the town. Small, a much smaller place than what Barberton was, but much nicer was smaller community, a much more warmer community. And once again, my father got involved in an even bigger manner at the school. During his holidays, he would paint the school for them, and he was there always when it was athletics. He waited for us at the end point, and he used to catch us in his arms. And, you know, when the boys were playing rugby, my two brothers, my father was like a puppet up and down next to the field, and he chatted and they talked to the rugby team, and it was just wonderful times. And that school, you could stay in that school until the end of your standard 7. I think today it's about grade 9. I'm not really on the top of the new fancy names for the school classes. And then you had to go to Clarkston, and which meant, once again, boarding school. My sister first went, and it was commercial school. And so she's 3 years older than what I am. So by the time that I reached the age where I had to go to the commercial school in Clarkston, my sister was finished with school already. She left school. But everybody remembered her. You know, my sister was a quiet kind of person, never naughty, always did her homework. The soft, really person that is always prepared to help and where she can. And I think of all my years at boarding school and at varsity, when I was also at the hostels, I think that unfortunately I only spent 1 year at the Clarkston Commercial High. As you could have gathered, maybe we just took commercial subjects like Snelskrif and shorthand and typing and commerce and mercantile law and what they then called bookholding. Today it's accounting and all that kind of stuff, which I enjoyed. I thought that is fabulous. To me, it was so nice to go sit in front of a typewriter and just type Snelskrif. And I must say, I was very good at it. I was, at the end, by my matric year, I did 180 words a minute, Snelskrif, and shorthand. And then the mine, once again, transferred my father. And then he said, no, he is not a child anymore. He doesn't feel like packing up everything and going to another mine until they decided, okay, now he must go and rescue what most of the times rescue mines on other places or start new mines or what. And he decided to resign and decided to go and farming. I remember my father bought his first farm in the Louis Trichardt area near a place called Ilum. It was a small farm and he was successful. The farm became too small. And then he bought a farm in the area of Dendron. For those who doesn't know, Dendron was a small, real boerentown, the real boerentannies and wimpies and cooperation for the farmers, you know. But today, of course, it's much bigger and not the nice place that it is. But I stayed behind for the rest of the year, because my father moved in the middle of the year and I didn't want to underbreak my school. So I stayed behind in Clarkston till the end of 1960. Then I went to Petersburg, or Polokwane, as they call it now, to the Tomnudeer High School, which was a technical site and a commercial site for us ladies and for the men, for the boys, technical subjects. It was named after the then member of parliament for Petersburg, Tom Nudeer. Oh, I tell you, the 2 years that I had there was wonderful. Our hostels was an old army camp. So we had small houses. There was only about 10 girls in one house. It was so nice. And it's out of town, away from all the traffic through the town. It was just wonderful. But we're not going to talk about my beautiful school days. We're still talking about my father. But once again, in all my years, I could always, as I say, just press my father's button, whatever it is. My father was strict, really strict. I mean, we were out of school already, and then my father still would decide with whom my sister, myself, would go out for a night. There was no such a thing as oversleep with friends, sleep out with friends. No, when it's dark, you've got to be at home. And in between, it sounds as if my mother wasn't involved, but my mother was. My mother was one of those persons who could do anything. She could cook. She always had the most beautiful gardens. She could make the most beautiful flower arrangements. She baked fantastic cakes. She baked wedding cakes. She could make a dress. She just took a piece of material, lay it on the table, and chop with a scissor, and then she just take it, and the most beautiful dress is the end product. And as there's not a thing that my mother couldn't do in the kitchen, besides her cooking and her baking. Now, she cooked jam. She made peanut butter, fruits, everything. My father was a big fisherman. Then he came back with bags full of fish. My mother would make curry fish in bottles, and there just wasn't a thing that she couldn't do. And when my father was this big man, my mother was a small, tiny woman who wasn't even 5 feet. She was, I think, if I remember correctly, something like 4 feet 11 inches those days, and she, at the tiniest feet, her shoe number was a 3.5, size 3.5. But besides her small body, she was very strict. And let me tell you, she knew how to give us a hiding, because the arrangement in our house was, if the 2 boys does something wrong, my father was the one who gave the hidings. If us, my sister, myself, did something wrong, it was my mother's turn. And we were like 10 years old, or even earlier, much earlier than 10. Those days was still old black coal stoves. And the four of us, we were put into pairs, brother and sister. And we were the first two persons, when it's your turn, to get up in the morning, go and make the fire in the stove, make coffee, tea. My mother never drank coffee. Make coffee for my father, tea for my mother, and take it and give it to them in bed. That was our pleasure, to do that for my parents, their first morning tea and coffee on a tray with a rusk, which my mother baked herself, of course. Nothing was bought in that house, if it was possible, because meat, everything came from the farm. Chicken, you've never seen how quickly my mother can wring a chicken's neck. And my father, I mean, he killed all the animals that were slaughtered in the winter time. It was big slaughtering on a farm. It was Bolton time and Burroughs time and game time. It was just that. So we just had to learn to do everything from my wonderful but strict parents. Every Sunday morning was church. My father was elderly in the church, and my mother's bench was right in front of the church. And if we were a bit late, then everybody was in church, and then they marched my mother, then me, then my sister, my youngest brother, my oldest brother, the fifth of us. We marched down the church gate and take up our seats. Unless there was really a big one. Otherwise, we had to go to church and Sunday school every Sunday of our life. Not that it bothered us, it was just part of our bring up. I saw it in my grandparents' house on both sides, mother and father. And as I say, we grew up like that. And one by one, we started leaving school. Now, from now on, you will find out that my siblings was quite a bundle, different bunch of people. Not the same, I wouldn't say the same caliber, but maybe seeing things different ways than what my mother and father saw things in life and expected us to do things. Anybody who went to a boarding school would know that you do pick up the wrong things in a boarding school. Well, I can remember, let's just go back a while when we was in Hartbeesfontein or Tigani in the boarding school. Me and my sister, we had a fight that afternoon, and I was sitting on my bed, and she came out of the bathroom, and she all of a sudden she realized she hasn't got her soap with her, and she says to me, "Could you please get me some soap?" And I took my bar of soap and I threw it to her, and she couldn't catch it, her head catch it. But I mean, after that, we were great sisters again. We brothers and sisters, while we was at home, would have done anything for all of us. We always tried to protected us. Two brothers, they were always supposed, if the four of us did something wrong, then the brothers were supposed to take it on them to say, no, that's their fault. They started it. So usually they end up getting the hiding and not us, until my father found out what was going on. And then my mother started hiding, giving us hiding. But let's get back to my oldest brother. He just sort of really just slipped through matric. He wasn't one for books. He didn't think books can do you anything good in future life. So after matric, he started working. But I know I've changed jobs, but I changed it because I want to. But he just changed jobs because he couldn't stay in his job because he didn't know what to do. And he had a temper. So somebody should have never tried to teach him something. His way was his way, and whether it's a correct way or not. And the older we got, he became like that at the house too. And at the tender age of 21, he met his wife, and they got married within a couple of months, which my parents, of course, thought that's too young. But on the other hand, they also thought maybe she can bring a bit of stability in my brother's life, which in the beginning it seemed like for the first couple of years. But within the first year, the first baby was there. And eventually they had 5 kids. But I've never ever saw husband and wife fought the way those two could. The way they fought, one would have thought one of them is going to be dead on the floor by the end of the fight. But yet, after the fight, everything was honky-dory again. They forgave just as quickly as the fight started. They started fighting over the smallest, simplest things that you could think of. But anyway, and around about the 3rd child, my brother once again started chop and change jobs. Most of the times he was out of a job for months. And then my sister-in-law had to work. She was a hairdresser, so neither they made. Hairdressers didn't make a lot of money, but she made enough for the family to put food on the table. Well, most of the times my father helped them financially also. And then he would get a job again for a couple of months, and then he's out of job again. And then my father became a very successful farmer there in the Dendron area, as I said. And he decided to buy a second farm. The first one that he bought was big, but not very big. Not enough for what he wanted to do. So after a discussion with my mother and my oldest brother and his wife, my father decided that he will give that farm to my brother. He didn't sell it to him. He gave it to him to help them. My father just thought, my brother wouldn't be able to pay him, even on a yearly basis, to pay him for that farm. And it was a very fruitful farm. The day when my brother got that farm in his hands, it was a beautiful farm. The lands were full, and there was just, everything was just to go on. But then the problem started. That was just in the time that the right wing really started to come up with this country, especially by the name of Eugene Terreblanche. And my brother always had a sort of a right streak in him. And he always liked to argue with us. And, we grew up in a political family, not only in our house, but in our family were big politicians. And anyway, then my brother became friends with the AWB. Every year he traveled across country to be with Eugene Terreblanche. Eugene would phone him and say to him, listen, go there and go there. And we all know it cost money. And then he would stay away from the farm for a week, up to 2 weeks. And in those 2 weeks, many things can happen on a farm. And then my father realized, well, there's something wrong. The farm is not what it's supposed to be. The land isn't irrigated. There's nothing planted on the land. And my father couldn't dare talk to him because of my brother's temper, and him and my father wasn't on the same political lines. So it always ended in a big, big fight. And my father just left him. And everything just went around the farm. Till one day they came and they sold the farm for debt that my brother collected. He was without a job, 5 kids, all still at school. And my father took him in to help him on the big farm. And my father bought that farm back from the people who took it, and he built it up again. And then he said to my brother, you can go back to the farm. It's built up again. My brother said, no, thank you. I've got a job with the South African Air Force. We all thought, well, being in uniform, maybe that's going to teach him a bit of stability. His kids left school early. None of them went further than matric. So they all sort of battled also in their earlier lives after matric. And he lost the farm again. And for now, I think we're going to leave him there. And I'm going to take you to my other brother, which was just younger than my oldest brother. He was the one who left school in standard 8. And he was the man that wanted to work with his hands. He was fantastic. Woodwork, he made the most beautiful furniture you could think of. And he was a perfectionist. He really was. Till this day, in my house, I've got a one-of-its-kind grandfather clock in my house, which this brother of mine made. The circumstances on which he made it will come clear in a bit. And he also, today he worked there, and tomorrow he worked there, and he somehow, besides his strict, well, maybe because he's strict, he was brought up strict, or I don't know what, but he met up with the wrong kind of people. I was still at school when this incident happened. And when I say the wrong kind of people, I really mean the wrong kind of people, those on the wrong kind of the law. And he hardly ever came home anymore. He only phoned home when he needed money. And I remember one weekend he was at home with a nice new car. And my father said to him, "Gee, you've got a beautiful car." He said, "Yeah, I got a good job. I really got a good job." And he started telling him about this fantastic mechanical job where he makes so much money. And I remember when he left that Sunday afternoon, I heard my father said to my mother, "I'm not very happy with that so-called fantastic job of him." He said, it's too good to be true. He couldn't make that kind of money to buy that kind of car in such a short period of time. And my mother still said to my father, "Well, let's give him the benefit of the doubt." It sounded as if he is serious about his job. It sounds as if he really enjoyed his job. He got married in the meantime. He had a son. And my mother spoke to his wife, and she said to my mom, "No, he goes to work every day. He takes good care of them. They haven't got shortages of anything now. They live in a nice house." But funny enough, he never invited my parents to come and visit him. To be honest, I don't think my parents even knew where they lived. But, well, give them the benefit of the doubt. They accepted. And it was during a school holiday. I remember my sister and myself were at home when the phone rang in the middle of the night. And if you or anything, what our family were, death in our family always occurred in the middle of the night. So when the phone rang in the middle of the night, there's only one thing that goes through your head: somebody died. And I heard my father got up, pick up the phone, and he spoke to somebody. He said, "Yes, it's Mr. So-and-so speaking." And then I heard my father went quiet. And I thought, oh my God, who went? Which one of the grandfathers or grandmothers, or what happened? Maybe. And I eventually heard my father said, "I really don't know where he is." I haven't seen him for a couple of months, but the last time when he was here at home, his wife and his son, he said everything is very well with him. He drove a nice car, and he said they are very happy. And the guys said, afterwards, my father told us what the conversation was all about. He said, and then the person said to him, but you know, Mr. It's about that wonderful car of your son that we need to talk to him urgently. And immediately I heard my father say to him, what's up? Why? And the guy said, no, just ask your son to contact me if and when you see him. And when we went to our room was just next to my mom and dad's room, so we could, if they talk a bit hard, we could hear what they were discussing. And my father told my mother that the police are looking for my brother in connection with car theft. I've never heard my mother crying like she cried that night. The next morning, she tried everything to hide her red eyes from us. But, I mean, we heard her cry. We could see her eyes was even swollen. My father left early, and he was busy in the farm the whole day. Came home late, had a bath, and ate, and they went to bed. And about a month later, the police came out to the farm, and they looked for my brother. My father told him, you know, I promised you that if and when he contact me, I will give your message to him. He still said to the policeman, he said, you know what, if I see him, I will come and hand him over to you myself, because that kind of thing doesn't happen in our family. It's just not acceptable for our family. And then it wasn't very long after that, the call came. They found my brother. They arrested him for car syndicate theft. And it was more than just his beautiful car that was involved in the whole thing. And in the end, I think, if I can remember correctly, they convicted something like 6 people for this syndicate car theft ring. And as I said, I was still at school when he went to prison. I think he got something like 20 years or 25 years, because there were so many charges against them, the group, and they were found guilty on each and every charge. They were sentenced on all different charges one by one, which in the end, as I think it was something like 20 or 25 years in jail. And yeah, he was in jail for a very, very long time, a period of time where his name just never was mentioned in our house. In fact, people thought we were only 3 kids, people who didn't know us beforehand. And he came out of jail when my daughter was at kindergarten. So you can imagine what I was. I mean, from my school days till kindergarten for my daughter, it's a long period of time. And then he had nowhere to go. And being parents, they took him in again. And then he asked my father one day if my father would take him to Pretoria prison. There's something that he made while he was there that he can go and pick up for $150. And he still said to my father, but he hasn't got $150. But my father said, what is it? He said, no, then he's not going to tell him. But if he think when they come there and he think it's worth $150, then my father was please borrow him the money. He'll repay him. When they came there, it was this out of the world grandfather clock, which he made step by step with his hands. I can't describe it to you. It is, I've never ever seen anything like that. But now I can hear you asking the question, so how did I get hold of it? Yeah, that's a long story. He met a woman, and she was one of those black spider women that we call her. I think very quickly she told my brother she loved him so much, blah, blah, blah. And he became her fourth husband. And she didn't want him to do his woodwork, to make his furniture. She said he spent too much time and it's not worth it. Although people were so interested in the things that he made. He made such beautiful. He made a dining room suite for one of the farmers in the area, which I don't think there's anything like that after that. Anyway, they got married and she didn't work. He didn't work. At the time, my father helped him out with money when they haven't got money. And then one day he wanted a rather big amount of money from my father. So my father said, okay, I'll buy the grandfather clock from you. Then you don't have to repay me the money. And he said, fine. But he always had in mind that the day when my mom and dad won't be there anymore, that the grandfather clock would automatically come back to him. We all accept it that way. Anyway, the grandfather clock stood at my father's house, and my beloved mother passed away in June in 1990 after a 18 months struggle with cancer and 2 weeks in a coma, which my sister, myself, and my father, we took turns to stand day and night next to her bedside, make sure that the drip is okay, and when she needs water, just to wet her lips. But she didn't know even that we were there. And when she passed away, it was about 9 o'clock the night of the 11th of July in 1990. And just after that, I had undergone a back operation. And then my father came from the farm to come and visit me in the hospital in Johannesburg. And he said to me that he just finished his new last will and testament, and the grandfather clock is mine. He stipulated it in his testament that that is mine. And I was the only one that knew that until the day when my father passed away on the 30th of December 1994. And then we got the last will and testament from the bank manager. And we saw, then everybody saw, okay, I got the grandfather clock. But you know, from the moment that we opened those testaments, those last wills, my brother and my sister-in-law, they changed completely towards me, completely. They didn't say a word, but I could feel it. There wasn't time for them to tackle me after my father's funeral, because we got, my daughter, myself, we got back from the graveside, and I packed my car and I came home. I just couldn't stand it. My two brothers there anymore, because my eldest brother and myself didn't speak to each other since the 2nd of February 1999. And I could feel the atmosphere between my other brother and his wife and myself. I just got to work on it. And then one day she phoned me and she said to me that they're giving me the opportunity to give it, that grandfather clock back to them, or otherwise they will write me a lawyer's letter. I said, you know, they can do what you want. It's stipulated in a last will and testament. That comes to me. I'm the heir of that. I inherited it. So you can go to court. I don't care. But you won't get it. And since then, they didn't speak to me. A couple of years later, on Saturday morning, I got a phone call from a cousin of mine on my mother's side, and he says to me, "Are you still at home?" I said, "Yeah, I'm home." "Why?" He said, "Aren't you on your way to the funeral?" I said, "Whose funeral?" I said, "Your brother." I said, "Well, you know what? I didn't even know he passed away. His wife and me, we weren't friends." And the same with my oldest brother. His kids didn't let me know that he died. I heard it a couple of months after that. So that's my brother's life. And me and my brothers. And now I come to my beloved sister. The person that, besides my parents, after the death of my parents, was the one person that meant anything in my life. The two of us spoke on the phone every day of our lives. There wasn't a day that we didn't phone and have a chat. "How are you?" And they lived on a farm outside Potgietersrus, what's it called, Mokopane today. And Christmas time, my daughter and myself, we went there for the Christmas period, and we spent the Christmas with them, you know, with her 70th birthday. She held it on a farm near Standerton, and we went all the way down there because I just didn't want to miss it. We didn't want to miss anything as far as the two sisters is concerned. We always help each other. I mean, we cut the dress over the phone. Both of us were good in machine work. We both make our own clothes, but if one of us maybe reach a point where we couldn't take it further, I phone my sister. And we literally cut a dress on the phone, work out a knitting pattern on the phone. That's how close we were. And when my sister and her husband was in the area, they always came and visit me. They came and stay with me. And then it was 4 years ago. They came on as a surprise. They just rock up here at my house. So that morning I said, what the devil is going on here? She says, no, we just feel like visiting you. I said, well, that is so fantastic. And we spent a couple of days. That was the best days we spent. Her husband, he's got a brother living in the same town that I am, and so he spent more time with his brother than what he spent at home, because I haven't got a husband for him to chat with him. So it meant me and my sister, we were just together. We went shopping together. Where she came from, there's not big shops. So I took her to all the nice shops. And she was fine. There was no signs that there's something wrong with her. Nothing, not at all. We made plans for her upcoming birthday, which would have been her 77th birthday, which was just more than just about 6 weeks away. And we planned the whole birthday. It will be on the farm. Just, it was just been so nice there. And when she left, those days I was a collector of dolls, the most beautiful porcelain dolls. And there was one of my dolls that ever since I got that doll, my sister was madly in love with that doll. I remember the doll sat on her own little chair. She's got a big wig, nice, beautiful. And funny enough, when she started packing when they start packing her car to go home after a few days with me, I took the doll and I said to her, the doll needs a new dress. She's old, not old, but just wash her dress, and it's a bit dusty. I said, but take it. And she still said to me, why? I said, accept it as an early birthday present for you. Knowing how madly in love she was with that porcelain doll, something in my head said to me, give it to her, although it's 6 weeks before her birthday. So I gave it to her, and she drove off with the biggest of smiles. And 2 days later, she still phoned me. She said, you must see the doll. She said, I made her a new dress. I had a wig done at the hairdressers. It looks so beautiful. I said, well, I'm so glad, my sister. Now, that is your 77th birthday present. And it was about 2 weeks later, a Sunday morning, my daughter came and woke me up early. It was about 6 o'clock in Sunday morning. And I still said to her, it's Sunday, did you forget? What is the time? She said, it's about 6. But Auntie Christine's son phoned and says she's in a coma in the hospital of Victoria. I said, what? It's impossible. She was here 2 weeks ago, and you know how happy and healthy she was. She said, well, Mom, get up, have a bath. Let's go and see for ourselves. I couldn't believe what I saw. That picture that I saw when I walked into that ICU is burned into my brains. It's there every day. She was lying there full of pipes and about 100 machines around her, and it's just lights that flickers, and hands were swollen, and I still said to her, son, can't you hear me? She said, no, she can't hear you. And excuse the phone, but he still said to me, no, she can't hear you. But I touch her hands and I touch her face, and I say to her, sis, it's me. And till this day, they say I imagined it, but till this day, I believe she gave me a smile, because I'm sure she knew I was there. She turned 77 in the hospital, and a dear friend of mine, we decided to go through to visit her in hospital with her 77th birthday. And although we were there many times in between the first day and the 77th birthday, when I called her name, everybody said, gee, she's gave you a little smile. The doctor said, no, man, it's impossible. She is brain dead. There's nothing we could do. And then that was the 29th of March. And I think it was a Friday. Yes, a Friday, a Thursday. Anyway, that Sunday morning, my daughter once again came in early, and she said to me, my sister's son phoned and said, if we still want to see her, we better come. And we sat there right through the day. All the family gathered there, and she passed away that night after a month in a coma, which she just never could come out. And that day and the day of her funeral is, till this day, 2 days that's always with me. The other day, I opened up a dictionary to look up a word. And when I opened my dictionary, there's my sister's funeral letter. I doesn't need much to start crying. So I better stop now, if otherwise I'm going to start crying if I speak longer about my sister, because if there was now one person in my life, besides my 2 wonderful parents, which was just always there, that's my sister. We were so close. We did everything together. When she wasn't feeling well. I could feel it. And the same with me. When I went through my cancer, my sister was just there. All those years I battled cancer, she was just there for me. And it meant so much. I thank God that I had the honor to be with her when she died. Although it would stay with me for the rest of my life. Well, my dear friends, I was only wanted to talking today, and now it's time for me to go. I've got some work to do, but I will be back. Don't worry, I will be back. So thank you very much for listening to me. Thanks for the tea. Thanks for the tears that I noticed. I appreciate, we became friends, the whole lot of us, over the last couple of weeks, the last 4 or 5 weeks. So till next time, take care of yourself.
Sarie, I want to thank you for another episode. It's interesting to me that people don't always seem to remember that there's a human being behind the uniform. And I think what you've done here for us is to explain that in great detail. The sadness, as well as, I suppose, the opposite of it, the happy times, all of it. It's part of human life. And someone in a uniform is, of course, exposed to life as well. So thank you for this episode. Thank you for sharing with us. I'm looking forward to the next one, which I believe might be the last one, but if it's not, it doesn't matter. I also want to say to all of you listening here that Sarie is organizing for us a whole bunch of police women. Some of them are major generals, others are of lesser ranks, but it doesn't matter. Some are women of color, some are not. She's organizing all of them for us to come and speak to us. And from now on, once a week, it will be either on a Monday or on a Sunday. There will be like a female police day on legacy conversations. And all this will build up until their 50-year anniversary, which takes place next year, and which we will report on also. Lastly, as you always know, as I always say this, if you have a story, if you want to come and share it with us, this is your time. As you've seen, you can talk as much as you want, as long as you want. We don't mind. We want to know what happened. And we want to know about you as a human being. That also is important. So until we meet again, God bless.